Growing up, of all the cameras I never had, this is the camera that I wanted the most. This was the camera that all the really glamorous photographers use. People like David Bailey and Patrick Litchfield. They all use the classic Olympus OM1. This is the OM1n MD version, which was released in 1979, about the time that I was getting really interested in photography, and I really wanted one of these. This particular one has been donated to the Sobel House Hospice charity shop, and they have asked me to check it over and see what I think of it, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. So this is a 35mm single lens reflex camera. Pop the back open. Try and take that film out, that would be helpful. It has a cloth blade shutter that runs from, well, 1/1000th of a second through to 1 second, plus B for bulb. And this one comes with the standard 50mm f1.8 lens. The first thing I notice about this when I open it up, and this is very common, is that the light seals on here have completely rotted away. It's no surprise. I mean, this camera is 45 years old. Light seals are available in kit form from well-known online auction companies for about £20. So that in itself isn't really a problem for me. The top dial, though, is really simple, but somehow different from most single lens reflex cameras of its time. We have the rewind crank here, and we have a rather large obvious on-off switch, which is now set to on. Let's turn it off. This, which would normally be the shutter speed dial, is actually my ASA dial, or ISO. This little button here I depress when I want to change the ISO. I have a cable release socket in my shutter release, and I also have a locking collar on it so that I can lock the shutter when I've cocked it, but I don't want to fire it. Nice easy movement on the film winder. Front of the camera, I have a film rewind switch here, so when I want to rewind the camera, when I want to rewind the film into the camera, I turn this knob to the R mark, and that allows me to rewind the film. I've got a self timer. On this side I've got my flash sync port for when I use a flash gun with an external cable, and showing its age, this has both X and the bulb setting, which in this case is marked FP. So I can, if I want to, I can use flash bulbs with it because they sync at a slightly different rate. Now, what you will notice immediately about this camera is the shutter speeds and the apertures are both on the throat of the lens. No, they're not on the throat of the lens. This is on the throat of the lens. The apertures is on the front of the lens. That allows me to control both the shutter speed and the aperture with the same hand. This is particularly useful because this camera is fully manual, which means that you have to set both the shutter speed and the aperture before taking the shot. Now, I'll show you the illustration from the guidebook, but you can see it has a very simple gate mechanism with a needle in it. Now, fortunately, this appears to still work properly, so I can judge whether my exposure is spot on, one stop, more than one stop over, or spot on, one stop, or more than one stop underexposed. And I can compensate according to my wishes. and my level of expertise. This particular one, I do have difficulty getting this off. It's because I keep using the wrong buttons. This one has a few marks on the focusing screen here. They don't affect the photos at all, but they would detract from the value. The mirror is quite clean, and the focus on this camera is slow because it hasn't been used for some time, but actually works fine. Again, you can see from the picture in the manual, it has a split image focusing device in the middle of the focusing screen, and that allows you to precisely line up the focus on the object that you want. It's an old, very old technology, but it works really, really well. On the bottom, we've got the slot for the battery. Now, I don't believe this is the original battery, but if I take it out, you can see that it has a V625U battery. It's quite an unusual shape, but clearly this wasn't the original one because this is in quite nice condition, and certainly after 45 years you wouldn't expect that to be working. It does work, and it works fine. These are, again, easily obtainable. You probably pay between £1 and £4 for a replacement battery. Of course, getting the battery cover off is not as easy as getting the battery cover on. It never is. As you can see though, while I'm doing this up, there is a separate cover here. I'm not going to take it off because underneath it is just two electrical, there's a mechanical connector which joins up with these two electrical points here, and that is so that you can put an additional motor drive on here. The motor drives for the Olympus cameras often came with a bulk film back. That's because at sort of 5 frames per second you would go through an entire roll of 36 exposures in, wow, not very long at all, 7 seconds. And so the manufacturer Olympus produced a bulk back which you could put up to 300 frames in. Phenomenal piece of technology. I've never actually seen one being used. A frightening experience to get them processed, because somewhere along the line you've got to cut to the film and you're always going to cut it in the wrong place. So, Olympus OM1n MD 1979. This is complete with the 50mm f1.8 Zyko lens. It is not in pristine condition. It does need the light seals being connected, but 20 quid extra. If I was to, I've been looking up the price of this, and I've seen them from 150 to 250 pounds. If it was sold at 150 with the acknowledged problems that I've outlined, which is the marking on the focusing screen and the light seals, you're probably going to get a reasonable deal. And I'll tell you what, hipsters will really love this. You don't have to take any pictures, just ponce around with this for a while. They'd love it. Beautiful, beautiful little machine. I wish I had one in 1979. Its time has passed, but that doesn't take away that it is a superb piece of engineering.